So here we go. Today we're doing the review 6.
Yep.
We're going to talk a little bit about the introduction.
Yep.
And we're also going to do lesson 203, which is I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me, and I call upon God's name and on my own.
That's what we're going to focus on.
Okay, yeah.
Now, do you want to make this references?
Yes, I want to share with you a few things about this idea. I'm not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. This is the part of the lesson that really wraps around the whole thing when we do the lesson as a whole, morning and evening at least, but whenever you think of it, it's an integral part of the lessons for the next 10 days and 20 days.
Actually 17, but
Oh,
who's
yeah.
counting?
Yeah, okay. All
So,
right.
so this is what
I am not, yeah,
See, what you said was really good, is that this is the theme
yeah,
that we surround with each of these lessons
Yeah.
now.
right. And I happened to notice, because I totally love the review of the first 50 lessons. I happened to notice that in one of them, I don't know if you have your book and you want to take a look at this, it's on page 94 of the workbook. It's lesson 57, but I'd like to look especially at the review of lesson 32. I have invented the world I see. So it happens to say in sentence 6 and 7, the Son of God must be forever free. He is as God created him. So that's just a restatement of what we're doing now. It's a theme that goes throughout the course. It's the most repeated statement of the entire course. So I'd like to look at the whole review there, that one paragraph. And this is just to give a little bit of reflection onto the idea, I am as God created me. You don't have to do this when you're studying, but it will help to kind of illuminate what's going on there. So it says, I have invented the world I see. I made up the prison in which I see myself.
So let's just pause there.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this set of lessons, it's the only part in the workbook where he has an introduction to the lessons. And what he's saying is, we haven't asked for you to practice this all the time or even put in a lot of time. But what we're saying to you now is if you spend more time in this practice, your benefit will be freedom from any form of misery,
Yeah.
and peace. And it's the peace that says, I'm content, I have no unmet needs,
Everything is okay.
and I'm not conflicted between the ego's voice and the Holy Spirit's.
Yeah.
So the idea of this prison,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When we get stuck in misery, when we get stuck in sadness, when we look at the losses that are
Or anger,
anger, whatever,
fear. Yeah.
Hey
Whatever-
guys, your screen keeps going out.
that's okay. There's nothing we can do about it.
That would be the internet.
Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you.
no, it just keeps flashing Dale's name. And then also I want to tell you you're not recording.
Yeah, we are. We're recording locally. And
Okay.
yeah, just Dale needs to just mute his
Okay.
microphone.
Thank
So,
you, Kendra.
the emphasis here is freedom. And in this set of lessons, he's literally saying, if we put the time into these lessons, we can see that we're making up what's causing us our distress.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't deny the circumstances. It doesn't deny the formness. It's separating out that from our reaction to it.
Okay.
And that's how we free ourselves. So I've invented the world I see. I made up the prison in which I see myself.
Yeah, so I think that other things are going to hurt me.
Right.
In other words, I've given away my power to that which I've projected. And why do we do that? We want to be hurt. How insane. How many times the Course tells us we're insane?
That's insane thinking.
Insane thinking. Yeah, it sure is.
Unfortunately, it says when we bring this up to our consciousness, where we can make a conscious choice, we will make the right choice.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Okay, that's a very good point.
It's important to see if I'm still trying to change something outside myself for my sense of peace, and it's not working because that's going to depend on a lot of things. But when I recognize the part of the story that I'm doing to myself,
yeah,
and I can free myself from that story.
Yes. Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about the story.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times it's not a fact at all that's hurting us. Well, it never could be because we made up the facts even, but it's even the interpretation of the fact. So I think that, you know, if you took the car, then that means that I have to drive the truck, and that means that it's going to be hard, and that means it's going to be miserable, and blah, blah. I've got a story. I mean, it's just like a whole chain of events that we put on there. And
so but let's clarify that. When we say we want the misery, it's important to understand that that's not really what we want. But he's saying we think we have to pay off this debt of pain and suffering to pay for how we've lived our lives.
Yeah, well, yes, or just for being damaged goods.
Whatever it is.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, I've known people who believe that they were born wrong.
Right.
You know, I'm born the wrong color. I'm born with a handicap. I'm damned.
Right.
And I gotta suffer.
But it's important to get that I don't really want suffering. My problem is that I think misery is happiness, because we've trained ourselves to think no gain without pain. Of course there's going to be pain in what I do. So it's important to remember we do want the joy and the freedom. We've just mixed up how that comes to us.
Yeah, and that's ignorance. It's just ignorance.
Right.
It's like forgetting that the ego does not have the answers. And the ego is what made up the prison.
Yeah.
So it says, I was bitterly mistaken in the belief that it's possible to imprison the Son of God. I was bitterly mistaken. I was happily mistaken. Thank God I was mistaken. I can't really imprison myself. There is a part of my mind that's always free. It's always free to choose love and joy and peace. Thank God.
Recall the sort of situations in your life when you see a mistake you made and it was just a silly mistake and you were able to laugh it off, right? Just, oh, it's a silly mistake. That's what it's saying we can do with every one of our reactions to misery and to pain. We can get rid of it.
It says we can laugh at it, I know.
Right? And that's not to deny on this level the way seems things that they seem to be kind of thing. But it's making sure we separate our reaction to the story.
Okay. So we have a function. So I guess we've done all you want to do with this. So let's go back to page 386. And another thing that came to me when I was studying it is in paragraph 6, it says, sentence 7.
It's paragraph 3, actually.
Oh, it is? Oh, yes, it is. It's paragraph 3. Sentence 7. We repeat this statement, I'm not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. Every time the hour strikes, or we remember, in between, we have a function that transcends the world we see. I think this is like so key right now. It's like, if I'm free, as opposed to the way I think, I typically think with the ego that I am in a body and I can only go as far as the body can go. This is saying, no, you are spirit, you are mind. You can change the world by changing your thoughts. We have a function that transcends the world we see. We have the responsibility to make ourselves happy and therefore radiate happiness
Right.
from
So
us.
let's expand that out a little bit. I'm not a body, I'm free. So for quite a while in the practice, he's been saying you have to say firmly to yourself, I'm not a body. That's our responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, we seem to be a body, but we're making these statements out of faith and out of trust that we have a teacher who knows more than us.
Yeah.
So it was saying in that miracles are seen in the light. This body's eyes do not see the light, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Our miracles are seen in the light. These body's eyes do not see the light, but I'm not a body. What am I? So in that lesson, it was saying you have to say no to the body identification,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But then at that point, I am free. The assertion there is, it's not the freedom of my body to do these things. It's
Right.
the freedom of my mind to
Right.
think differently.
I am just not stuck in a body. I can think with God.
Right,
I can think God-like thoughts.
right. And that then becomes, so if I've negated the path of not this, if I've negated this false identity, then it said, since we've blocked the truth of who we are, then the Holy Spirit can reveal to
Right.
us our true power, which says you have the holiness, you have the strength, and you have the wisdom
Yeah.
to perform miracles, to offer forgiveness
Right.
to every situation.
Right.
So, not this, I'm not identified with the body, and not to deny we really believe we are, but just to see the body as having a function.
It's just an instrument.
That's it.
When we can see that. Now, since the Course is teaching us that we are mind
Yep.
and we're not body, mind identified with God is the infinite mind,
Yeah.
the one mind. There's a little piece of it that we call the ego. That's just a little dream. That mind, sometimes we're living in that. And in that part of our mind, it says, mind is brain, brain in body, you are stuck.
Yeah.
Right? You're stuck according to what the world is doing to your body. So that simply has to be completely reversed by recognizing I am mind, and in this mind there is a body. This is a very powerful mind that has made up this body, that body, the computer, the table, the world. We made it to go into that little tiny place of ego, and the Holy Spirit has freed us without destroying what we made.
Mhm.
So this body is good when it's given to Holy Spirit. This body is helpful in bringing happiness to me and everyone else.
Yes.
But if we use it the way ego makes it up, to be a prison in which everything can hurt us, then we're just, we're stuck. And this Course is freeing us.
So let's talk pragmatically. I mean, we keep talking metaphysically about what exists, what does not exist. But practically speaking, we have to have the tools,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Yeah.
that free us from whatever distress or misery we seem to experience, right?
Yeah.
So here's what he says in the rules for guidance. And these are about how to quiet the ego's voice and how to hear the Holy Spirit's. And it has this concept that sounds intuitively wrong, but it says you'll be happily wrong. You'll be happily wrong about this mistaken identity,
Uh-huh.
right?
We'll be joyous the more we accept who we really are,
Right.
which this lesson is
Right.
telling us.
So, but what I'm saying is he's not saying there, try to analyze this or try and reason, reason works in discernment. But don't try and analyze this. Just ask yourself, how do I feel? And sanity, at least at that moment of sanity, when you're stuck in the ego and you're stuck in the suffering and the pain and don't know how to get out of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You can at least say, I don't like the way I feel. And he said that's the beginning of sanity. Not how do I analyze this?
Right.
How do I make this outrageous claim that there's no world in my body makes sense? Just say to yourself, do you like the way you feel?
And if you don't feel good, you're not thinking with God.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. If you don't feel good, you are 100% thinking with ego.
Yeah.
There's no exceptions. God never brings anything but happiness to us. So we are allowed to have our bad feelings and our very narrow perception as long as we want to keep it. But when we want to be free, it's right there. And today's lesson, so we've been talking about I'm not a body a lot, but today's lesson is I call upon God's name and on my own. And when we did this lesson the first time around, because this is a review,
Yeah.
we talked about the many possible names of God.
Mhm.
And of course, there is no real name for God. It's too big to have a name. A name is a limitation. A name puts an edge around things. But we're human and we use language, and it's one of those examples of how he can use what we made. So let's just review some of the names of God.
Sure.
Love,
Mother,
light, Father,
wisdom, happiness, any attribute that you associate with divinity can be a name of God,
right.
because the attributes of God are not separate from God. And that's our whole belief, that we've been able to separate this power God gave to us and use it in our own way. And using it in our own way is what causes the misery. So any attribute, peace, joy,
Yeah,
all of those things can be the name of God.
right.
And what it's saying is, you're actually calling upon the reality of who you are when you use this one name for everything,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because the next lesson is going to say, and that's worthy to study carefully, is that the name, language, and concept is how we broke the oneness. Here's what it's saying. You made up words for everything, and then you made up space between everything, and that's how you fragmented the oneness.
hmm
But there's one name for reality because there's one reality, and that
Okay.
reality is oneness. So any attribute can be the name of God.
So I call upon God's name and upon my own means I am one with God. I am not the creator, the original source. God is our creator.
Right.
But he's given us the power to create, which we don't really understand here. The Course talks a little bit about our creations, and the closest we can get to what that is our loving thoughts.
Right.
But we are part of God's mind, therefore we're part of God.
Right.
And we're made out of the same stuff as God.
That's like the yarmulkes on the top of the head to remind you that brain limited. Brain's limited.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, right?
I don't know.
But it is what focuses the mind, because we recognize at that moment we need help.
You know, it might be worthwhile to talk about that brain-mind thing, because if you pay a lot of attention to neuroscience, there is a presumption that the brain is the mind, and we have to be very careful not to buy that. It doesn't mean that, you know, you might need brain surgery. You know, the brain is a thing, but it's not the mind. What the Course says is that the brain translates mind to body.
So you can be stuck.
Well, only if you look only as far as brain for the
Right.
wisdom.
Right.
If you only go to your memories and your senses to know what to do, how to perceive, if your guide is here, your brain, you're stuck, because it's just part of a system that's self-referential.
Yeah.
The brain and the body. The brain does not have access to wisdom, it I should say, it receives wisdom, and then it gives it to us to perform or to think those kinds of thoughts. God, which I imagine as surrounding us like this, I mean, I've got a spatial kind of thing going on here. The energy of God, when we open to it, tells us what to do in a way that makes us happy.
Right.
If we just say, well, I learned that person told me a lie once. He's a liar. I'm staying away. I learned my lesson. And that's definitely just going to the brain.
So one practical way to see the difference between physical thinking, which is all the brain can do, and spiritual mind thinking is that physical thinking is always a limitation. You can only see so far with your eyes. You can only hear noises that are so close. You can only feel things touch it when it's close. It's a limitation you put yourself around. But when you begin to see that the mind is free, that we're really a thought in God's mind, and thoughts can change right now. I'm not a body. I'm free. I'm still as God created me. The power of our creation, the true power of our ability to practice a form of love here called forgiveness is the power that we have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the physicality is a limitation. It's a limitation of time. I'll be okay when that's fixed in the future. I'm not okay now because the past is operating supposedly in my present. That's a physical limitation.
Yeah.
But a mind is free.
And also the physical limitation of time is these bodies are going to go.
Yeah.
You know, they just don't last forever. But we last forever. So coming from the place where we are what we are is hugely freeing and powerful. And the way we do that is by asking for help when we get stuck. I mean, just the word help. That's it. Shortest prayer in the world.
Yeah. So he says, I mean, here's one of the ways to think about how loving the Course is. So it's saying that when we're rooted in the ego body self, the constant question in the mind is, will I be enough? Will I be enough?
Yeah.
Will I have the strength to do what I need to do? Will I have the talent? Will I be enough? Will I be enough? And that's the source of despair in our minds, wondering if we lack, if we're going to have enough.
Mm-hmm.
And what the Holy Spirit says is that the only thing he's waiting to hear from you is that in and of yourself, as you see yourself now, you're not enough.
Our version of ourself is sadly lacking.
It's not enough. But what it's saying is this depth of despair, I'm not enough as I see myself, becomes the well of grace. The very thing that's causing despair, I'm not enough, can be an entry into the unlimited grace.
When we ask.
We have to ask.
Yeah.
Otherwise we think we know.
That's right.
And that's fine,
right.
as long as we're not in pain and misery. But that's, you know, they said the only lesson in pain is that you do not need to learn from pain.
Yeah.
Why keep making the same mistakes in my thinking constantly? Why am I keep? That's what it says in guidance. It's not wise to become involved in every decision. They're continuous, but there's a set that comes forth.
Yeah.
Like the pandemic, like how I see my, personal, emotional all these things are limited.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
But we got to ask, like you say.
Okay, the name of God is, here's the prayer. The name of God is my deliverance from every thought of evil and of sin, because it is my own as well as his. So the idea of deliverance from every thought of evil and of sin, that just call it pain, just call it ignorance, call it pain in yourself or that you see in someone else. And calling on the name of God, it says, I call upon God's name. God, help me. I ask for help many times a day, sometimes out loud. It's like if I have a thought that distresses me, and I bet we all do this. Here comes a thought out of the blue from 10th grade, right?
Yeah.
Where something I'm ashamed of.
Or proud of.
Well,
I'm sorry,
could
I
be.
interrupted you.
No,
Go
it
ahead.
could be. It could be. But, we don't usually recognize that
Yeah.
as painful.
Yeah. You're right.
But, a painful thought comes, and I just say, help me, Jesus. Help me. And it's gone. I don't have to stress about it, worry about it, anything like that. Call upon God's name and on my own. So I use Jesus as a substitute name for God.
Absolutely.
And it says in the, excuse me, either the clarification of terms or the manual for teachers, it's safe to do that. It's okay.
Sure. Because he identified with the truth of who he was. And he set the example for us that no matter how outrageous the world seems to be to you, and being crucified is pretty outrageous, no matter how it seems, I set, and get this, not just the divine example, but as a human being, I was able to reach beyond these ego thoughts.
Right.
And not interpret myself, even though this outrageous assault, and that's what he's saying. We're going to be in situations where it seems to draw out our attention to the misery and to the pain, and we're being encouraged to recognize we have the power to free not just ourselves,
But everyone.
but everyone else.
Yeah.
And at the end of this week and the next, we're going to spend more time on these practice instructions. But the thing I want to highlight today for us to work on is he's saying we're headed towards this experience that's beyond the words, it's beyond the concept. We bring the concepts to our practice, and then we go beyond them.
Right.
And what it said was, at the end of this description of this practice, here's the purpose, here's the goal, to be in the Holy Spirit's hands, allowing him to teach us how to go, trusting him completely for the way each practice period. Now notice, any time that you put into practice can best become a loving gift of freedom, not just to you, but to the world. A loving gift of freedom. If you put time in this, it's the recognition I can be rooted in the truth of myself.
And you know why we don't, let me speak for myself, why I don't spend more time? I think I got to do something else. I got to take care of my body in some way. It might be, I got to wash that kitchen floor. Whatever. I've got some bodily thing that needs to be done so that I don't have time to practice. And that's just such a, I'll just say, mistaken way of thinking.
Yeah, but it's a process, right?
Absolutely, it's a process.
There's a prayer in part 2 that says these ideas that seem so outrageous are to be slowly taken up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you realize it's my thoughts alone that cause my experience. And he said this has to be heard many, 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 many times, partially accepted,
Yeah.
accepted more and more, until finally you just stand on this place. I'm not a body, I'm free, for I'm still as God created.
I'm an eternal being.
Right.
I'm made of love. And if you want to use words like that, you can do that too.
So
Okay.
let's wrap it up there.
Thank you so much for being
And-
with us today.
Yeah. And I'm going to quit recording, and then we'll have a little exercise for you.